He's not dead.
Why did you let him kill me? It was the clown. Make the clown go away.
My mom says I can't be a serial killer. I'm in my room after another long fight with my mother. She caught me with one of the neighborhood cats, ready to behead it. She walked over, grabbed the cat and the knife, and dragged me by my ear into the house. This all began after my dad died 3 years ago. It was Christmas, and I was crushed. That night I paced my bedroom, thinking up a name for the tabloids, when my mother barged into my room, looking infuriated. "Alan, why is there writing all over the bathroom wall in my lipstick?" she demanded, holding the tube of almost used up red lipstick. I told her that I was dangerous and that she should leave immediately. She just rolled her eyes, took my phone away, and left me to my own devices. That's how it would always go. I would do something outlandish, and she'd scold me for it. At school, when asked on a getting to know you assignment, asking about what I wanted to be when I grew up, I replied, Dexter Morgan. Of course, the teacher had me stay after class. Of course, she called my mother and showed her the slip of paper. Of course, my mother glared down at me, tersely told the teacher that we were done here, before dragging me by my arm to the car. Then she yelled at me for making a scene and acting like something I'm not. You are not edgy. You are not cool. No one is impressed with your little stunt. If you pull that shit again, Alan, I'm sending you to the local charm school. So cut it out. When we got home, she took all my true crime books, my slasher DVDs, my Halloween DVDs, and of course, anything that had to do with Dexter. Even my Dexter's Lab plushies. I was incensed and thought, I'll show her. At first I tried poisoning the family cat, but she noticed me taking Mr. Sprinkles into my bedroom for long periods of time and banned the cat from my room after that. I also wasn't allowed magazines in my bedroom because the local kids told their parents about the random ransom notes I'd been leaving in locker rooms at school. This all culminated to today, where she thinks she will be sending me to charm school to straighten me up. Well, I have news for her. I've hidden a straight razor in my... Alan, what is this? You think you are so dark, brooding, and edgy, huh? Well, I've informed the staff about you, and you will be isolated from the other kids outside of classes. So don't even try it. Damn it. Black-eyed children My encounter. My experience with a black-eyed child. Okay, so let me start by saying that my wife and I had finally gotten out of our cramped apartment, and now we wish we never left. After our newborn son Mason was born, we set our sights on this quiet suburban neighborhood and ended up with more than we had bargained for. The night that all this happened, I was staying in the house alone. We'd just finished painting, and my wife said the smell gave her headaches and wasn't safe for the baby. So she ended up staying with the in-laws that night and in the next town over, leaving me to defend the homestead from intruders. The place was eerie at night, not in the "holy shit, this place is haunted" sort of way, but the "this place is way too quiet" kind of way. I was used to the city after all. It didn't help that the whole place was empty. The only room we'd got completely furnished was a baby's nursery. I eventually just fell asleep, knowing I'd need to be up early anyway to help move the rest of our things inside. That's when things got weird. I am still unsure to this day whether I had woken up to the knocking at the door or just before it began, but that's beside the point. It was 3:30 in the morning. I was in one of those half in a daze, half extremely pissed that I'd been woken kind of moods, and headed to the door to scream at whoever had gotten me up. I looked out the window first. I'm not an idiot. And there he was, just some kid, maybe 9 or 10, just standing out there. Instinctively, I opened the door and asked what was wrong. He didn't say anything back, just stared at the ground. I found that strange, but just figured he was shy. I asked if he wanted to come inside, and he nodded and entered. That's when he finally spoke. "I can't find my mom. Can you call her?" Without even a hesitation, I tell him sure, and asked what the number was. "I'm not sure," was the only response I got. I figured I'd just call the police and have them sort this whole mess out so I could get back to sleep. So I got back to the bedroom for my phone. When I returned, the kid was nowhere to be found. My front door was wide open, and there was wet paint all over the knob. I just shrugged it off. Note to self, the neighbor's kid is weird. I head back upstairs to bed and flinched back because there the kid was again. It sent ice down my spine, knowing this kid was just lurking around my home. Even stranger, he was standing just outside my newborn son's nursery, just staring inside. I flicked on the hall light, and he looked directly at me. That's when I saw his eyes. They were black, pure black. I didn't know what to think. It wasn't anything I hadn't seen on TV before, but for some reason, it made my stomach turn. Looking back, I never did get a good look at his face. It was like once I had seen his eyes, the rest of him didn't matter. It was just some unnatural thing. My whole body was on high alert, and the rest of our conversation felt like I was on autopilot. "Where is the baby?" he asked. "What?" I responded, almost offended at the question. "Your baby," he said, pointing into my son's room. "He's not here. You need to leave," I said, petrified. I knew that if this kid didn't get what he wanted, I'd be an easy replacement. He looked back to the ground. "Oh," was literally all he said. He walked down the stairs and back out the door without another word. Needless to say, I stayed awake for the remainder of the night. I spent the next day with my wife, who had thoroughly convinced me it was all just a weird nightmare, and that we were all going to be happy here. That was until she went to lay Mason down for a nap. She came back to me pretty upset. The baby's crib and blanket was covered in wet paint and children's handprints. If this ever happens to anyone, do not let them inside. I'm starting to think these black-eyed children enter people's homes asking for help and take their newborn babies. For what? I'm not sure. Maybe to make more of themselves? Either way, I don't think my wife and I will be sticking around to find out. On the road. I've never had much luck creating scary stories from nothing. I guess it's just not my style. So to tell you this story is to admit to myself that I believe it is fully true. A story that I have been long too scared to tell. My dad didn't think much when telling me this story. Being a truck driver, he had seen much more interesting things while driving on the road. But this one was different because we never easily accepted the supernatural. It was a night like any other, far away from the comforts of home, alone where your mind can play tricks on you. My dad was driving back home in his car. Being a truck driver, he was used to driving long distances, sometimes at night and alone. He was driving on an older mountain road at night while trying to fight off exhaustion. Of course, at this point, there's a lot that can be explained by a trick of the mind. However, seeing a black cat in the middle of the road was only the beginning. His mind was slow as he tried to process the animal in the road. Seeing roadkill was common. What wasn't expected was the cat running in front of his car. He tried slowing down, but it was too late. He felt in his body the bump as the car hit the poor animal. Coming to a stop, he got out of the car and went around to the front to move the cat out of the road. The night air was cold, and the darkness limited his field of vision. But he could see, as clear as day, that there had never been a cat. Hitting an animal would leave something, a carcass in the road, a messy tire, even the smallest blood splatter. But there was nothing. Looking around, he noticed the woods on either side of the road, dark and beckoning. Going quickly back into the car, he tried clearing his mind before continuing on. It was such an unimportant moment that he tossed it aside and didn't think much of it. But when it happened again, the audible thump that he felt as he hit the cat. This time he didn't stop. This time he continued driving and instead looking in the mirror back at the road. He didn't see the cat now. He wouldn't bring up that moment for a while. The phantom cat still plagued him on dark roads while driving alone. It was always a cat. Sometimes it would run out from the woods, but he always felt the bump, that thud he felt in his whole body that meant he had hit something. And he never saw the cat after hitting it, always finding nothing. The next time it happened, he finally decided to bring it up to his coworkers, who had, in some cases, decades of driving experience. He expected them to joke about his sanity or not understand what he meant. He hadn't expected them to take him seriously and tell their own experiences with the black cat. Although their stories were a bit different, rarely ever was it a cat for them. Instead, they told their stories of a black dog, a dog that disappeared as quickly as it appeared. Some of them felt the dog helped them by waking them up. But my dad felt that his interaction wasn't meant to be friendly or helpful. There was something ominous and looming about the cat. Something very wrong, like a warning or a bad omen. These moments continued to happen from time to time. It was somewhat odd that it was a story shared by others, people who drove a lot, usually as their job. So when I saw the black cat and felt the woods call to me, I can't help but give in to what it wants. The dark pines of the forest block the light of the moon. The howls sound human, but are surely a mountain lion. The forest is supposed to represent nature and freedom, but this is so unnatural. My mind is clouding over, and I can barely hear the crunch of moss and leaves underfoot. The far-off hoot of an owl. Shadows pass over my dull, blurred eyes. It's okay. Nobody gives a second thought about a disappearance in the woods. The Halloween party. I was never a social individual. Been that way since I was a kid. I was bullied often at school, and that caused me to be a complete introvert. Nowadays, I never really go outside except for groceries. But that didn't stop some friends from asking me to go to some costume party with them on Halloween. They wanted to help with my social anxiety. At first, I wasn't willing, but I eventually caved. What's the worst that could happen? As the days drew closer, I just decided to go to the nearest Spirit Halloween and buy some spooky jack-o'-lantern mask and a generic Dracula costume. I thought it'd be a fun combo. Halloween night fell, and just like that, we went to the party. Having a mask helped suppress much of the anxiety I would have had otherwise. The night went on. We just hung out in our own little corner, occasionally talking to anyone who approached. Some people made jokes about my costume. I laughed along, though I honestly did think it looked cool. Flamboyant, but cool. Just how I liked my monsters. Most people were either dressed as zombies, vampires, cowboys, and whatever people seem to dress up as now. In fact, I think I may have seen some people in those sexy costumes. Never been my thing. Everything just seemed kind of bland, for lack of a better word, except for one man. I'd occasionally see him in the corner of my eye, or just somewhere farther away from most guests. Much like me, he seemed to have grabbed a bunch of different costumes and Frankensteined them together. He wore a dirty, ripped straitjacket with an even more ripped and torn black hooded cloak over that. He had long black stringy hair that went down to his shoulders and his face. His face was the most impressive part of all. He had the sickly pale gray skin, bloodshotted, whited out eyes. He had no nose or lips, and had deep cuts all over his face. Some were close to his mouth, giving him an unnaturally long, permanent smile. It did its job, unsettling me, that's for sure. The man didn't seem to interact with anyone for most of the party, until I guess he found the person he was looking for. A man dressed as a 90s jock was talking to who I assumed were some friends, but was interrupted when the cloaked figure walked over to him, tapped his shoulder, and when the 90s jock turned around, he tilted his head, and out of nowhere, he stabbed him in the stomach repeatedly. The jock screamed as he tried to fight the gruesome man off of him, but failed. People tried to get him off, but he just started stabbing anyone who dared to interrupt him. The party was filled with screams. Everyone was running around frantically. Many called the police. Luckily, my friends and I got out of there unharmed. Eventually, police got a hold of him and he was quickly arrested. They couldn't seem to ID him, though news sources were quick to name him the Halloween Butcher. When questioned, he would only say that the man bullied him when they were in high school, and that somehow justified what he did. No one has heard about what happened to him since. We don't even know if he was actually locked up or not. Some say he managed to escape. Others say he was just simply shot. Well, whatever he is, I hope he rots. Jesus, I still can't get the face out of my head. I still see it in the corners of my vision every so often. At night, I'll even see him in the dark corners of my house, always staring at me, his eyes never blinking. Thank you so much for joining me. You can also find me on Instagram at duchessof.darkness or Twitter at duchessofdark N2. Also, please send me your stories or poems to duchessofdarkness27@gmail.com. Until next time.